Once upon a time, there was a poor miller who had a very beautiful daughter. One day, the miller got a chance to meet the king. Wanting to impress him, the miller proudly said, "I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold." The king was amazed and said, "That is a skill I would love to see. Bring your daughter to my palace tomorrow. I will test her." The next day, the miller's daughter was brought to the palace. The king led her to a large room filled with straw. He gave her a spinning wheel and a reel, then said seriously, "Now, start working. If you haven't turned all this straw into gold by morning, you will die." After saying this, the king locked the door and left her alone. The poor girl sat there, feeling completely hopeless. She had no idea how to spin straw into gold. The more she thought about it, the more scared and miserable she became. Finally, she broke down in tears, crying bitterly. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a strange little man walked in. He smiled kindly and said, "Good evening, dear miller's daughter. Why are you crying so sadly?" Through her sobs, the girl answered, "I have to spin all this straw into gold, and I don't know how." The little man thought for a moment and said, "What will you give me if I do it for you?" The girl quickly took off her necklace and said, "I will give you this." The little man took the necklace, sat down at the spinning wheel, and started working. Round and round he turned the wheel, whir, whir, whir. And in no time, the reel was full of shining gold thread. Then he put another reel on the wheel, spun it again, whir, whir, whir. And that one filled with gold too. He kept working like magic, spinning all the straw into gold until the morning light filled the room. By daybreak, when all the straw had been spun and every reel was full of shining gold, the king arrived. When he saw the glittering gold, he was amazed and filled with joy. But instead of being satisfied, his heart grew even greedier. He ordered the miller's daughter to be taken into another room, even bigger and filled with more straw. He told her sternly, "Spin all of this straw into gold by tomorrow morning, or you will die." The poor girl sat in the room, feeling completely helpless and lost. She began to cry once more, her heart heavy with fear. Just then, the door opened again, and the little man appeared. "What will you give me if I spin all this straw into gold for you?" he asked kindly. "The ring on my finger," said the girl without thinking, desperate to survive. The little man smiled, took the ring, and sat down at the spinning wheel. He turned it, whir, whir, whir. And once again, by morning, all the straw had been spun into glittering gold. The king was even happier than before when he saw the gold, but his greed was still not satisfied. He had the miller's daughter taken into a third room, the largest one yet, filled from floor to ceiling with straw. "This must be spun into gold by tomorrow morning," he said. "But if you succeed, you shall become my wife." The king thought, "Even if she is just a miller's daughter, I will never find a richer wife in the whole world." When the girl was left alone again, she sat helplessly. Then, as before, the little man appeared for the third time. "What will you give me this time if I spin the straw into gold?" he asked. "I have nothing left to give," the girl replied sadly. "Then promise me," said the little man, "that if you become queen, you will give me your first child." The miller's daughter thought, "Who knows if that will ever happen?" She was so desperate that she agreed to the little man's demand. The little man set to work once more, and by morning, the entire room was filled with golden thread. When the king came in and saw the dazzling gold, he was overjoyed. He kept his promise and married the beautiful miller's daughter, and she became queen. A year later, the queen gave birth to a beautiful child. She was so happy with her new life that she completely forgot about the little man. But one day, he suddenly appeared in her room and said, "Now, give me what you promised." The queen was struck with horror. She begged the little man to take all the riches of the kingdom instead, but he shook his head firmly. "No," he said. "Something that is alive is dearer to me than all the treasures of the world." The queen began to cry and weep so bitterly that the little man felt sorry for her. "I will give you 3 days' time," he said gently. If by that time you can guess my name, then you may keep your child." The queen stayed awake the whole night, thinking of every name she had ever heard. She sent messengers all across the land, asking for every strange name that could be found. When the little man came back, the next day, the queen began guessing names. "Is your name Casper? Melayer? Belazer?" she asked, saying every name she could think of, one after another, but every time, the little man just shook his head and said, "That is not my name." On the second day, the queen sent her messengers to search the whole neighborhood for unusual names. That night, she tried again. "Maybe your name is Short Ribs? Sheep Shanks? Lace Leg?" she asked, hoping to be right, but the little man always answered, "That is not my name." On the third day, the messenger returned and said, "Your Majesty, I couldn't find any new names in the whole land. But as I was walking near a high mountain, at the edge of the forest, where the fox and the hare say good night to each other, I saw a little house. In front of the house, there was a fire burning. Around the fire, a funny little man was jumping up and down on one leg. He was singing, 'Today I bake, tomorrow I brew, the next I'll have the young queen's child, ha! I'm so glad no one knows, that my name is Rumpelstiltskin.'" You can imagine how happy the queen was when she heard that. Soon after, the little man came into her room and asked with a sly smile, "Now, Mistress Queen, what is my name?" The queen pretended to think hard. "Is your name Conrad?" she guessed. "No," said the little man. "Is it Harry?" she asked. "No," he said again. "Maybe," said the queen slowly, smiling, "your name is Rumpelstiltskin." The little man screamed in anger. "The devil told you that. The devil told you that." He was so furious that he stomped his right foot deep into the ground, so deep that his whole leg sank into the earth. In a wild rage, he grabbed his left leg with both hands and pulled so hard that he tore himself in two.